That was what took me to places that I never dreamed I could go. Your parents tell you stories because either they want to inspire you, they want to entertain you, or they want to put you to sleep. And first and foremost, these were stories that were to inspire. But they never sat down with me with a Bible and told me a Bible story. I went to Sunday school to hear Bible stories, and what I remember of the Sunday school Bible story was there was one about this guy called Moses, who they put in a basket and he went down the river. I remember that one. And then there was this one about this kid called David, who did something to this great big guy Goliath. And then there were always the Christmas stories about Jesus and Jesus being born. I was never too clear about what Easter was about. I only knew that we got really dressed up and had these nice suits, hats, and gloves. But I didn't know much about what it was about. When I was 16 years old, I wrote to the minister of our church because I was having a crisis. I don't know if you call it a faith crisis. It was a 16-year-old crisis. I mean, you name it. We're 16, we're having a crisis. And I wrote to the minister of the church and I said, what do we believe? I need to know what we believe. And he wrote me back and he said, I can't tell you. I can't tell you what to believe. I can't tell you what we believe. I can only tell you that there is something greater in the universe than ourselves. I needed some kind of an answer, I thought. Well, for years, I was an agnostic because it was just easier. It was just much easier than to try to find something to believe in. So I believed in myself. I was brought up to do that, wasn't I? The little engine that could taught me to believe in myself. My father repeated over and over again the things I needed to know were the best friends. I'm going to offend somebody, and I don't want you to take this out of here too offended. I want you to just wash it clean. But my father taught me, you have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, and the 2 best friends you have in this world are your bra and your bank account, and don't forget it. This is also the man who quoted the golden rule to me all the time. I know he had no idea where it came from, but he knew what it was. It's great. I put it in the dedication of my book. Anyway. It took a long, long time for me to get a concept of faith, a concept of belief, a concept of believing in something that was greater than me. That there was a universe out there that had been created by something certainly a heck of a lot more important and a heck of a lot more powerful than me. And perhaps it comes full circle and goes right back to my story of Horton Hears a Who. How many of you know that story? It's a Dr. Seuss story. It's the story of Horton the elephant, who is minding his own business by the pool of water, and he hears a voice in the distance crying out, help, help, and he can't see anything. He can't find it, he can't find the sound, he can't find the voice, and he comes upon a puff of dust. You know, like a dandelion puffball? He comes upon this puff of dust, and he hears the voice coming from the puff of dust. And it's a planet of people living on this puff of dust called Who's. The Who's from from Whoville are in this little speck of dust. And they are afraid that they are going to be destroyed. And Horton hangs on to that speck of dust, and Horton swears that he will protect forever and ever that speck of dust, because he knows it's there. Now, I will tell you, this story was written during the McCarthy era. And the punchline of the story is that all people are important, no matter how small. And Dr. Seuss had a very definite reason for writing this story. But Horton hangs on to that speck of dust and protects the Whos. But Horton must convince the rest of the universe around him that the Whos really exist. And so the Whos have to gather all of their noise-making stuff from Whoville to make a noise for the world to hear them. The Whos have to stand up on top of buildings with their pots and their pans to clatter and make ready the sound of the universe, so that everybody will hear all of the people who have threatened Horton with destruction for what he is doing. And all the Whos gather together, and they start to clatter, and they start to make noise, and nobody hears, and nobody hears, and nobody hears, until the smallest Who in Whoville, Jojo, gets his horn and climbs to the top of the pile, and lets loose with the blowing of his horn, and finally, with the addition of the smallest little Who, the sound of the entire planet is heard. And Horton has saved Whoville. My theology, perhaps, is very simplistic, but I see God as our Horton. God as the one who protects us and keeps us safe. And when in the midst of our life we can't figure out what we believe, that God, Horton, is still there, hanging on to protect us. If I have a message to leave with all of you today, I would ask you to take the words of the letter to 2 Timothy to heart and become those people who are not afraid to talk about your faith. Become those who are not afraid to talk about the stories that mean something to you. Yesterday, I heard testimony from 3 members of this church. Very, very moving stories about their faith. One who was saved by her relationship with the church. Another who was saved by the strangest intervention by God. And another person who felt as though God's Spirit was directing her to speak right at that moment with marvelous ideas for this church. I heard that testimony from 3 people who would no more get up here and tell you that than the man in the moon. But they told me yesterday in conversation. They told me yesterday in small company, why not you? Why would you ever be afraid to sit down with your children, with your grandchildren, and tell them that little story? Just tell them the story of your faith and how you came to believe that Jesus Christ was the one to believe in, that God was your Horton, and you were not afraid. And you had the courage never to be ashamed of your faith and to stand up